welcome to the Jolera Interview Series. I'm your host, Paolo Del Nibletto, the Chief Channel Business for Jolera. This series features prominent guests in the IT industry talking about technology innovation, leadership, and the marketplace. Today we have the Canadian Business Unit Leader and the National Director of Services for Dell Technologies Canada, Marc Mondesir. Marc started his career in 1998 at Dell Canada when it only sold direct. He left the company for other opportunities only to return back in 2006, 1 year prior to the historic Dell Partner Direct program and the company's entrance into the channel community. Mondesir has had a long history in this industry as a true problem solver, and he says that technology itself is only part of his interest. Marc's true passions are in business, entrepreneurship, and above all, people. And we're going to ask him to delve into those topics and more. So please welcome Marc Mondesir, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Marc. I want to start off at the top with a very large quote that you have on your LinkedIn page. Quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world," unquote. Why do you have that up there, and what does it mean to you?
Nice. Well, first things first, Paolo, let me just start by thanking you for the opportunity. I've had the pleasure of looking at some of the videos that you've done in the past, and they seem to be very well put together and very successful. So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks also for the little trip down memory lane just now. It's always weird to hear your own bio, right? So I never really get used to that. Look, great question on the quote, because I actually do take these things quite seriously. The quote that I actually just only recently made that change. The quote that I had before on my LinkedIn page was "create," right? Which was a bit of an ode to being anti-consumption, right? This particular quote really speaks to kind of the sign of the times, right? Things are complicated right now. We were just talking about it, but before we got started here around politics. There's certainly a lot going on in terms of diversity and inclusion issues, right? Frankly, it's overwhelming. And as I like to remind myself, words right now are like jet fuel, right? They spark a lot of emotion in people, whether it be, hashtag Me Too or Black Lives Matters, right? It creates a lot of emotion in people. And what I like to tell myself is, happiness is focusing on the things that you can control, right? And, when you look at all the world's problems, the one thing that I can control is myself. I can control my actions and the way that I kind of show up every day. And that quote, "Be the change that you want to see in this world," kind of reminds me of that, reinforces that, and helps me sort of personify that.
So, speaking of that, you also describe yourself as a customer advocate. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a bit of a cliche, I'll admit. I think a lot of people in sales and in marketing describe themselves that way. But I guess I'm a student of Covey, right? One of the books is the classic 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Covey talks about, this idea of beginning with the end in mind. And I tend to kind of govern my life in that way. I'm outcome oriented, if you will. And, my day job is no different. I love to look at what I do as being a problem solver, and, helping customers, internal and external, kind of remove obstacles. I believe that that's what the market is looking for, is helping us solve, critical business issues, whether they be related to current issues like COVID or, other opportunities, like the opportunities that digital transformation offer, right, to businesses. So when I talk about being a customer advocate, it's really about being outcome focused and really being sort of honed into and kind of dialed into the point of view of my customer or those that I serve, rather than it being about my own personal success or the personal or the success of the organization that I serve. So that's what I mean by being a customer advocate.
So basically figure out what success looks like and try to, aim for that.
Exactly.
So diversity is being discussed in many, many industries, and IT is no different, but you have an interesting angle on that. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this, a few times over the weeks, and certainly, as a Black man in this sector of the economy, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, there are obviously personal elements of this, for me, right? Part of it, speaks to sort of, inequities in pay, inequities in power. There aren't a lot of people like me or, non-white males that are sitting in positions of power in our industry. So certainly that's a big part of the equation for me. And I'm very involved in diversity and inclusion type of initiatives for those reasons. But the other part that I think about is this idea of unconscious bias.
Right.
It's fascinating and scary to me all at the same time, particularly when you think about it within the context of, software and, algorithms, right? I love this quote that I heard a few years back that says, software is eating the world. And it's true, right? Software is everywhere right now, and it's automating a lot of different aspects of our lives, right? And that goes beyond sort of autonomous cars, but a lot of day-to-day things are being automated through software, right? And software is really a series of algorithms, right? But people program those algorithms. And this is the part that I find fascinating. It's people that program the algorithms to interpret the world, right? So if a person, right, the people that are building these algorithms in these companies that are at the forefront of technology, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons, and all of the other organizations that are very involved in big data, Microsoft being among them. If the people that are coding have inherent biases and they're coding those biases into these softwares, the implication of that is that they're really coding these biases into the fabric of our society. And to me, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, right? Because we could find ourselves, back to the drawing board when it comes to some of the progress that we've made in our society.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about, everything that's wrong in the world today, whether it be politics, whether it be, racial issues, gender issues, the issues that the LGBTQ community is facing. But, the world has also made a tremendous amount of progress, particularly since the Second World War, right? I would hate to leave behind a world for my children, where they are dealing with not only the issues of the present day, but having to re-deal with some of the issues of the past. So that's what I worry about.
Yeah, and that's something really that I've never thought about, but inherently everybody has a bias and they're coding it, and who knows what that will look like. But let me ask you this, because I'm interested in your career and how you got started. And did you ever think in your wildest dreams that you'd be in the IT industry?
No, not even close. My passions were, I should say, because my passions are a little bit different today. Things like kids and family and those kinds of things start to take the forefront. But my passions, early in my career, in my early 20s, were really in music and in entertainment. I'd always seen myself as an entrepreneur, and never saw myself working for a corporation. I figured I would be, the builder of corporations, right? In fact, early in my career, the second kind of chapter in my career was retail. And I had joined that particular organization to work in their audio department, right? I thought I was going to start my career kind of selling stereos and being close to music and that sort of thing. And then eventually, do something of my own. But my leader at the time made the decision for me. He said, no, I'm going to put you in computers. And I'll never forget this quote. It's laughable today, but he goes, because that's the future. That was his only reason. He goes, that's the future. So, I start this computer thing, kind of fell in love with leadership. He had asked me to kind of lead the computer department for him, kind of fell in love with leadership. The technology piece, as I said, and as you said, was always kind of secondary to me, but I kind of fell in love with this idea of leading people and, helping them kind of reach their goals very, very early on, and started to see early successes. And then shortly after this retail thing, I joined Dell. And sort of the rest is history. But before all that, I was a small business owner. I owned my own all ages dance hall.
Wow.
Iowa sector.
That must have been a lot of fun.
It was cool.
All ages too.
Yeah, truth is, up until recently, up until this current role, I would always say that was still the best job that I ever had. It was short-lived. It was like a 1.5-year stint. We had some good wins, but I made a lot of silly mistakes, a lot of ego-driven mistakes that I learned from the hard way.
Right.
So I was able to, get my dream at an early age and lose my dream at an early age, but it taught me resiliency, and I'm still here to tell the story. So.
But at least you learned from it, right? I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about the as-a-service market. Where do you see that sector heading?
It's an interesting question because I keep thinking about these last couple, 200 days, right? Since the pandemic. I can't believe it's already been that long, but I mean, ask Google. It's been close to that long. And look, for the last 5 years, we've been talking to our customers about transformation as a way to gain a competitive advantage, right? So, as sellers of technology, that's what we've been talking to our customers about, right? Spend less time on keeping the lights on activities and more time on innovation. That's obviously been accelerated big time in the last, 200 days as a result of COVID. The workforce issue has become very prevalent for many businesses. So now digital transformation has gone from being something to provide organizations with a competitive advantage to being a necessity.
Yeah.
In many cases, there is no business continuity without technology, right? And the as-a-service model is really just a complement to that because it gives customers an opportunity to consume these technologies in a flexible way, in a way that kind of, matches the goals and needs of their business, whether they be a small business, medium business, or a very large business. So clearly compelling. It's a good time to be in technology because there are real problems that we can solve out there.
You mentioned COVID earlier, and we're talking about lasting impact and everything like that. What do you think the COVID-19 pandemic, subsequent lockdown, what do you think will be the lasting impact on the IT sector?
Well, look, Paolo, I mean, I'm still working that through, right? I'm still kind of trying to figure that out for myself. I'd be arrogant if I told you that, I had any inkling of really what's going on for sure. But, I think I would frame this with questions. I've got questions, right? I think they're interesting questions that are going to be answered over the course of the next little bit, right? Like telehealth is becoming mainstream. So what does healthcare look like, from now on? I think one thing's for sure is that, the last 200 days have accelerated many of us, our comfort around the role that technology can play in our society and in business. Definitely, right? Because we're kind of put in a corner. We kind of have no choice if we want to continue to, to connect with people, right? Yeah. It's kind of accelerated our comfort with some of these technology. Like myself, just this week, I had to go see a doctor for, got an issue going on with my ear. And it was a telehealth experience. I'd never done anything like that before. I can tell you that before COVID, I'm not even sure that I would have been okay with that, right? But when necessity comes knocking on your door, you kind of have no choice.
Right, yeah. Or you would have to wait like hours at emergency to go and see a doctor about that. It could be nothing.
Yeah.
But in these 200 days, have you come across any interesting strategies or, new business approaches that, you found successful in terms of handling the pandemic and subsequent lockdown?
Yeah, I like that one because, what I'll tell you on that, Paolo, is coming out of the gate with this thing, I think, our natural reflex was technology.
Yeah.
Right. So Zoom or Teams, turn on the video, one-on-ones taking place and, on conference calls, on video calls. But of late, what I will tell you is I have personally pivoted, and I've encouraged a lot of my team members to pivot. And what I've noticed is taking a bit of a back to basics approach and almost an anti-technology approach has been really that 20% that has made the biggest difference, particularly as I think about relationships. Okay. So I want to say about 100 days ago, I was really starting to think about, okay, what is the real impact of COVID on our business right now? What is it that I'm fundamentally unable to do today that I wasn't able to do, a couple of months before? And what I kind of landed on was fundamentally what was being challenged was my ability to build new relationships, not maintain the ones that I had, but build new ones.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's something to be said about breathing the same air as somebody, shaking their hand.
Right.
Seeing them face to face. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And there are some things that are lost, when you've got these screens between us, right?
Yeah.
But the approach that I've sort of been adopting lately is, again, going back to basics, picking up the phone as opposed to scheduling a video call, checking in, and, focusing more on, auditory cues, rather than visual cues to kind of figure out whether or not the things that I'm trying to communicate are sort of gelling with my audience. And that's been tremendous, Paolo. I would have never imagined a couple of 100 days ago that I'd be able to not only build relationships, but build like deep relationships with some folks. There are some folks that I've met in these last 6 months that I know will become long-lasting friendships and alliances, and we've never, been in the same room together. That's exciting to me.
Yeah, that's interesting point there. So you've actually learned a new skill, an auditorial skill from the pandemic. But before that, like we've talked about numerous times, we would just either go meet the person for coffee or lunch, or pick up the phone, and now it's all video conference. It's quite interesting. Let me ask you this: you're a leader in this industry, and we're in a time of crisis. How do you handle crisis, Marc?
I think I'll put it by talking a little bit about my journey, right? Thing hits, and I went into doer mode. Almost like it was, if I'm being quite candid with you, almost like a knee-jerk reaction to, call it feelings of anxiety, right? This was a lot of unknown. And I mean, for me in particular, the lockdown occurred on my birthday, right? So I remember we went on my birthday dinner on March 14th. My birthday's on the 13th. We went out for dinner on March 14th. The restaurant was completely empty. And then by Monday, everything had sort of hit for sure. So that first week, I just focused on doing. I was just doing, trying to do as much as possible until I kind of, took the time. And in doing, it was also reacting, right, to the family situation. So I had to kind of settle the family, settle the kids. There was a new normal in terms of their schooling, even though it was March break. We had to anticipate some of these things, right? But once that stuff was settled, I had to, it really started with some introspection. And I had to go back to basics. And it comes down to purpose. Why are you here? What do you do? and bring it back down to its basics.
Right.
What did I tell you that I do? I help people reach their goals. I help move obstacles. I help solve problems.
Right.
So I came back to that elemental level and reminded myself that, you know, what I do for a living, my superpower is to help people solve problems and to remove obstacles. So I brought it back down to that basic, right? And then I took the exact same approach with my team, right? Once I had that clarity of thought, right, with a few tenets, in fact, I have them written up right there. There were kind of 6 things that I told myself that I needed to do to sustain my resiliency so that I could continue to solve problems. And they're written right there. Make sure I take a walk every day, right? I still get dressed every day to go to work.
That's right. That's key.
That was a thing for me. So no jogging pant bottoms, right? I mean, what I'm wearing today is not unlike what I would have, worn to go into the office, minus the jacket. I even have it up here to put on shoes. I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but yeah, you put on shoes in the morning, it gets you in the frame of mind that you're going somewhere. And then I take the shoes off at the end of the day, and it puts me in the frame of mind that work has ended, right? The other one is push-ups, which is the reminder to do a little bit of exercise every day. Vegan lunches, which was just my way of saying eat clean, right? And I put on here to engage on social media, knowing that this was a fantastic tool to connect with people. And the last one was drink water. And my water bottle's right here. Right. So those are sort of the basics to deal with the resiliency. It's understanding your purpose and then focusing on the task at hand, one day, one problem at a time. This is what I always do when I'm overwhelmed. One day, one problem at a time.
Because, you have to take a serious approach to it, right? Because the experience won't be the same at home as it would be in the office. But why can't it be, right? Unless you take it seriously like you have. I want to take it back to Dell for a second, Marc, specifically on innovation. What should the market be watching for? What's going to really impress them coming out from Dell?
There's some irony built into this situation for companies like Dell, right? Because back to what I was saying, we've been talking about the benefits of transformation for years, right? Close to a decade, if not more, right? If you include sort of some of the sub-elements of transformation. So, what I would offer is new products and services aside, we're staying the course with what our key message has been for the last 3 years, which is really around, Dell exists to enable customers' digital transformations around 4 transformational pillars. Workforce transformation, right? Which is all about enabling end user productivity. IT transformation, which is all about kind of delivering those cloud IT-like services to end users, right? You've got application transformation, which is really at the heart of digital transformation, right? Yep. Modern apps is really what drives productivity. Modern apps sit on modern infrastructure. And then there's, of course, security. Our message is going to stay consistent. What I do for Dell, right, within the services world, is that we help customers accelerate time to value around those solutions and mitigate the risk of implementation and maintaining those solutions. I will share this, though, is that one thing that folks out there that are curious about what Dell is doing and that may want to take advantage of some of our capabilities is we're really doubling down on consumption models. So you talked about as a service, we've got a lot of creative ways that customers can consume our technology, whether it be on a subscription basis or outright acquisitions and everything in between. And that's where, organizations like Dell Financial Services come in. So I'd encourage everyone to, take a look at our website. We've got a lot of, different webinars that are being set up in really cool virtual settings that are not just kind of your standard, webinar Q&A type of setting, but we've got some nice, visual virtual sort of environments that our customers can engage with us on. I think it'd definitely be worth your while if these are things of interest to you.
Marc, I can talk to you for hours on multiple subjects, but I'm actually all out of questions. But do you want to add anything? Well,
I mean, I think I'll just reinforce what I've already said. Actually, no, I will add one thing, which is another thing that I've learned in the last a couple of 100 days in particular, but certainly in the last 14 to 15 months. The power of teams, teamwork.
Yeah.
Another cliche, but my goodness, an underutilized opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right? The power of diverse teams. I have really come to have some intimacy with how important it is to harness all of the different stakeholders that you have around you, to not come in with fixed ideas, right? To foster that culture of curiosity. That's true, I know, not only from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, but it's also true from a productivity standpoint. So that's been huge. I can't speak about that enough. But if there were any parting thoughts, I would say it's what I said at the beginning, right? For those of you out there that are feeling overwhelmed by all of the different problems that need to be solved, either in the world or within your own little worlds, whether it be issues at home, issues in the workplace, and everything in between, my motto is one problem, one opportunity, one day at a time. It's the best advice I could offer.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time, Marc. Really, really appreciate it. Where can people follow you online or on social media?
Nice. Well, I'm not a Facebook guy. And Instagram will be for my inner circle, right? But for those of you out there in internet land that are curious to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. My handle is Mondesir, little I, big M, Mondesir. Feel free to reach out anytime. I accept all invitations, quite frankly, on LinkedIn. All invitations. It's a point of view that was offered to me by a mentor a few years ago that has since passed away, so I'm just carrying the torch for him.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that inner circle is going to grow after this interview, for sure, Marc. There you have it from Marc Mondesir of Dell Canada. Marc, thanks again for your time and great insights. It was tremendous. Best of luck at Dell. That's it for me, Paolo Del Nibletto, signing off for the Jolera Interview Series. Until next time, so long.